just to Councillor Arms said, this all I've done been a conduit to pass on residents' complaints and want to know what the answer is.
Okay, I think we'll make a start. It's 5:30. Good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Matt Bizzard, Chair of the Customer Focused Scrutiny Committee. Welcome to members and to officers and to those watching from home. This is the Customer Focused Scrutiny Committee of 6th of February, in case somebody knows what date it is. And we'll speed straight on the agenda with the apologies, which is item 1. I think we have 2 sets of apologies.
Yeah, apologies from Ian Quartz and Alice.
Thank you very much. Any other apologies that we're aware of? Okay. Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda, minutes of the that should still be former People Scrutiny Committee. Are we still? No, that should be the last Customer Focused Scrutiny Committee. Yeah, which was held on the 5th of December. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read those. Can I pass those as an accurate record of that meeting, please? Yes. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Item 3 is just a reminder to members about the declaration of interests. Should there be any disclosure of pecuniary interest on any item on the agenda this evening, if you can raise your hand and identify that at the appropriate time. Thank you very much. Item 4 is the Local Government Access to Information Act 1985, which excludes the press and public. I don't believe we have anything on the agenda that is likely to push into that territory tonight, but if we do, if anything arises that falls under that, we will obviously pass the necessary motion at that stage. Item 5, which is questions from the public understanding Order 19. We haven't received any notices of questions from the public for this meeting. And item 6, which is questions from members of the public under Standing Order 20. Again, we have no advance notice of questions from members. So we get into the meat of the agenda now. Item 7, 7, 8, and 9 are all financial stuff. And Dave Foster gives his apologies for this evening. He's unwell, so Michelle White very kindly stepped in to talk us through these this evening. So Michelle, over to you for item 7, which is the General Fund Capital Monitoring Statements. Item 2.
Thank you, Chair. So apologies on the last minute standing. So apologies in advance if I can't answer your questions, but I can certainly endeavour to either answer or come back to you. So in terms of all 3 reports, they have been presented to Executive on the 10th of December and then on to Council on the 17th of December. Item 7 covers the General Fund Capital Monitoring update at the 6-month stage. Looking at the section 151 of the comment, it's pretty much a positive position in terms of the capital programming that we're progressing against the approved capital programme at much higher levels than we've experienced in previous years, and that's notably due to being on site with some of the major projects. So those will obviously include the new leisure complex and bus station. We've got the major works at the Riverside Leisure Centre. We're also making significant loans to Exeter City Living this year to support their business plans, and we're also moving forward with the purchase of commercial properties in line with council's approval. So I think that's probably the key headlines in terms of the capital. I haven't taken any questions you may have.
Thank you, Michelle. Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much. There's nothing for the committee to approve on this because this has already gone through Executive. So on to item 8, which is the overview of the General Fund Revenue Budget 2019-2020.
provide an update to members at the 6-month stage. The general fund, this is the service running costs effectively. Again, looking at the section 1.5 officer comments, we're comfortable that the budgets are generally on track this financial year, with forecast slight underspend. Higher than the prudent level that we resolved to retain, which is less than 2 million. So again, the report sets out the key forecast from budget variances, but that's the key headline. Again,
Michelle, any questions on this item? Okay, thank you. On to item 9, the HOA budget.
So this report is a combination. So this provides an update in terms of the capital programme for the HRA and the service running costs in one report. So in terms of the revenue position, the HRA is actually forecasting at the 6-month stage quite a reduction in service running costs. They are explained in the body of the report, but most notably related to the repairs and maintenance programme. We have set aside a budget to prepare sites for clearance ahead of the disposal to Exeter City Living. There has been a bit of a change in development programmes for both the HRA and Exeter City Living, in that the HRA can now borrow to develop themselves. So sites that they might have previously been constrained in terms of development, they can now take forward themselves. So those monies will be saved while they actually explore development opportunities themselves. And the low maintenance painting programme, main contractor was appointed due to time lag in mobilisation on site. There is slippage in the programme, which we're reporting this year, but officers are comfortable that they will catch up and it won't impact on work for next year. So it's not a saving, it's just a slippage in that kind of works. So that's the revenue. In terms of the capital programme, quite a significant programme for this financial year. We're still reporting spend of circa about 20 million, about 10 million on improvements to existing housing stock, and then most notably the development of the new St Lloyd's Extra Care scheme. And again, so those are the key headlines. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thanks, Michelle. I'll open up to questions. Wow, I think it's right.
You can tell they're often willing to sign you.
I think the one thing, and I think you very mentioned this, and I think we discussed it with Dave at the shares briefing, was about the timetable for these meetings and the quarters, whether that is looking at whether that's a shift of this meeting or a shift of preparation of the budget reports. I don't know, but I don't know whether Dave got anywhere with looking at that and whether something a report back to the Scrutiny board.
Yeah, and I can certainly agree that obviously I'm talking to you this evening about 6 months stage where we're actually sort of immersed in looking at the 9-month stage as we speak. So there is a bit of a time lag, but following the restructure, the format that we're following is that it goes to executive and then comes back to retrospectively. I'm not aware of any change at the moment, but I can certainly do that backstage so we can give an update.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's great. We'll raise that through the Scrutiny programme board, which is the 19th of March. Michelle.
If I follow up on that point, because I mentioned it, I've forgotten, because we're doing it the other way around now. But it's going to sort of exec and full council in December for figures that end in September. We might be making a much more radical suggestion, because a lot of these meetings, why it's on that date, and the answer is because perhaps when we always have it, we might need to sort of say, well, we don't have to all cancel in December, we have it in November, because if the data's available, why wait a month to look at it? Yeah, we should look at it. So, I'm sure somewhere a meeting date will get changed, this might not be this one.
Indeed, it's not specifically this meeting, it could be a number of ones, so worth looking at. So we'll maybe we'll report back on that. Thank you very much, Michelle. We will move on to item 10, which is one of the issues that we wanted to hear more about. And I'm pleased that Simon Hill and Dave Barton are here to do a presentation on the Psychic Service. And I think we'll talk a little bit about where we are presently and how things will change. And then I think the plan for this committee is to, we haven't yet agreed exactly how we can do it, but to have a regular ongoing review of the website questions as it rolls out. Over to you.
You stole pretty much exactly what I was going to say, so that's fine. So Simon's going to give you a brief update of where we are in the process, what we've considered so far, and what the future might hold. I think it's probably worthwhile we have a discussion afterwards on how we scrutinise this in the future, how you want us to report back, because it's obviously a live issue, it's of a lot of interest to the rest of the sector, so how we do that reporting, I think it is worth discussing. So I'll just pass you over to Simon.
So I'll run through the activities we've been doing so far since council gave approval for the new service, and then I'll give an idea of some of the forthcoming issues, and as Dave says, we'll be useful to have this discussion after how you would like to be updated.
Most of it, well, mainly in the presentation, I'm starting with choice of vehicles because that's the procurement with the longest lead-in time. There's a waiting list for these vehicles. Lots of other councils want them, so we thought we'd get our trials in early and decide our spec, because we'll need to order these in the next few weeks to start the project on time, which, by the way, is September 2021. This was actually used in previous presentations, which you've already seen. It's one of the Teambridge's curbside recycling vehicles. I realise now it's a slightly idealised picture. It was not only taken on a sunny day, but you'll see a wide street with no traffic, no hazards, no obstructions. So that's a perfect scenario. We've demoed that vehicle in Exeter. It's a bit more like that. We borrowed one of these for a fortnight. It's the same vehicle that's parked at the back here for members and officers to come and have a look at. What we did is our drivers went into the streets that we know are currently quite difficult to get into, or we can get into them, but we have cars parking on either side of the street. After demonstrating this vehicle and a couple of smaller alternatives for some time, we've narrowed down to, we think, about 4% of streets will need a special type of smaller vehicle. The others we can do with the full width vehicle. Obviously, bigger lorries, you can get more on them, but if they get stuck, then we have some problems and the scheme isn't efficient. So this is the so-called urban vehicle. That is for road, by the way, for sure. So yes, they can get in there. Loading from the side is a bit tricky, and I'll come on later to how we've been learning from other authorities how they deal with that. These are some of the smaller vehicles we looked at. The one on the left, we actually had in Exeter for a few days, so we took that out for a go. We didn't bother with the wide streets that we know we can get down, which is the majority of Exeter. We looked at the streets that are currently serviced by our 7.5 tonne small refuse vehicle. We actually found that the 7.5 tonne curbside lorry is actually less manoeuvrable.
It's a bit like an overgrown motorhome, we thought. It's very, very high and quite long, so things like overhanging trees were a problem. And of course, some of the streets with narrow access have more of these obstructions. So we asked around, and it turns out the same manufacturer also does the vehicle on the right, which is a 5.5 tonne chassis. less volume, but if you can get into streets with fewer obstructions, it's actually more efficient overall. So our project officer is putting the finishing touches to our estimates of exactly what the vehicle requirements are, based on 676 properties a day, which is very specific, but that's what has been modelled based on experience elsewhere. So we'll be in a position fairly soon for our final decision on vehicle choice, which is obviously fairly crucial to the project. The other major procurement with a long lead time is the sorting equipment at the MRF. The current equipment is optimised for our wheelie bin collections, but it's also very old and prone to breaking down. So what we've done for the preparations for investing in new equipment, we've actually sent about half a tonne of our current material over to Germany to a testing centre to see how modern optical sorting equipment works, whether it will do what we need it to do, and whether that backs up the assumptions in the original consultant report to back up our service. So we sent some mixed cans and plastics, but also we were keen to see whether the equipment can separate paper and card, because with our commercial recycling collections and possibly some of our communal bin stores, there's still going to be a need to have a mixed material stream that's rich in paper and cardboard, but we want to be able to separate the two to maximise the value. The machine, it looks something like our existing MRF, if any of you have paid a visit. The difference being those orange boxes in the middle, that's the optical sorting equipment, so it uses a laser beam to identify each item as it passes along a belt, and then uses a jet of air to fire it off into the appropriate conveyor belt. So it picks off the target materials and then discards what we don't want. We then send it around again to identify the next material stream. So materials drop onto two different belts. So this is the machine running to pick out paper. So the belt on the left is picking out white paper to send to, we would send it to our existing paper mill, and the stuff on the right would be other materials which go back into the mix for further sorting. The results look encouraging so far. What you see on the left in that crate is a typical mixed plastic and cans load, which is what we would collect on our curbside recycling scheme. It's been through a process and pick out PET bottles, and at first sight it looks like it's done a pretty good job of only picking out PET bottles, and that's what maximises the value of the plastic. And what makes our scheme, we think, viable is we can achieve not only high value product, but also protect ourselves against fluctuations in the market, or countries like China or Indonesia suddenly deciding they don't want our material because it's mixed. The more we can separate, the more self-reliant we are on actually selling the material and getting good prices for it. And crucially, turning that material back into high-end uses. At the moment, our PET bottles get recycled back into food-grade bottles because they're high quality. Lower quality applications would be recycling the plastic into something lower grade, like park benches or traffic cones. So we're very pleased that we can send our milk bottles and pop bottles to go back into food packaging, and that's something we want to preserve, but also do it more cheaply with less hand sorting and more machinery. We've done the same with paper and card. This is our paper that's gone through the process and been separated. So on the bottom you can see that's newspaper and magazines and white paper to a pretty high quality, so we can sell that material for a good price. And then a bit at the top is cardboard that's been picked out, so we would sell that separately. You get a lot more income than trying to sell mixed papers. Some local authorities are having to pay to get their cardboard recycled. So instead of receiving an income, they're actually having to pay somebody to take it away. And that's a situation we want to avoid, because all our forecasting is based on getting an income for that material. So again, the more we can separate to a high quality, the better. We're going to get full results from this trial within the next 10 days. But I think what we've seen so far indicates we can be pretty confident that the machinery that's out there and available now will do sorting to the standard we require with the number of people that we've assumed in the original report and the modelling that was done by Eunomia. Because obviously we've come up with a capital and revenue estimate that's based on a certain number of employees, so we need to know that we can get that job done with that number of people. So the results so far are encouraging, so again we can start the procurement process formally shortly, and we may send this, do this sort of testing to another company as well, just to get a further set of data, but that's actually quite encouraging. This is actually Exeter. So we've done quite a lot of contacting of other local authorities just to see how they get on with curbside sort recycling. This is nothing new. There's nothing in Exeter that somebody else hasn't already had to cope with. We've, as well as local councils, we've also looked at authorities that are urban but further away, where curbside sort recycling is being introduced or has already been introduced, places like Bristol, Bath, but also I think Cardiff, Belfast and Glamorgan are switching from commingled to curbside sort collection. So they're looking at the same challenges as us. So we're learning from those authorities as to how they cope. But East Devon and Teignbridge were useful because they're on the doorstep. So we visited them. They are more rural authorities, but both districts also have town centre areas with the same issues. So for example, East Devon were very helpful in letting us know how they deal with working on narrow streets. They've got their safe working practices and risk assessments on how to cope with that. Communal bin stores is another one. They've actually successfully introduced curbside sort recycling in bin stores with a good method for collection that we will learn from. What also issues like injury and absenteeism rates, because we want to be sure that we can manage the manual handling risks involved, because it's a different style of working. East Devon in particular had a very good communications set up when they rolled out their new service and went to 3 weekly rubbish collections. Here's an example of what they sent out last year. This is actually a bin hanger, so it's a double-sided laminated sheet that is hung on people's wheelie bins. They do it as an annual thing. The one on the right actually tells people what happens to the food waste they collect, and explains that it's used to generate electricity and fertiliser for local farms. On the left you've got a reminder of collection dates, but also they're introducing innovations like for people with an Amazon smart speaker, they can say, Alexa, as it says, when's my bin collected? So really making use of new communications methods, which I think it does make service changes a lot easier when you've got a range of comms methods. It used to be we had to write to every resident to say, your collection day or your service is changing, this is what you need to do, read the leaflet, and then they would phone up and have a long phone conversation. The more comms methods you've got, the more people will reach. So things like social media and new technology is really useful. And East Devon have got some really good examples. But crucially, they use that to complement tried and tested methods, like having, for their service rollout, 4 additional recycling officers whose job it was to just be available to go and visit any household who's having a problem coping with the new service or saying that their rubbish bin isn't big enough, going out to help those people. And that's something that you don't ignore. You use the new technology and the web and those systems, but you still got to back it up with old-fashioned being able to go and visit people on the doorstep. Our own recycling service team will say the same when we've done it before. over the years, we've scaled back the number of recycling awareness officers that we have on the ground. I think we had a team of recycling officer plus 3 education officers, plus now recycling officer and 0 education officers. And while our service hasn't changed over the last few years, we've managed. But once you start to introduce a service change and you want people to present their waste in a different way, you need those extra resources, and that is built into the revenue costs that were presented to full council. The other thing is, we learned a key thing is a properly resourced customer contact centre. So I've had a discussion with Stephen Clayton, team leader, that we can expand the contact centre workforce for a temporary period while we introduce the service, because there will be extra phone calls. You can direct people to the website all you like, but some people will still want to pick up the phone and talk. So, based on experience of other councils, we think 4 extra recycling officers, 2 extra contact centre staff for the duration of the rollout will enable us to actually deal with the issues, because you can send people as much information ahead of the service as you like, but they won't always read it or always understand it. So we've got some experience there. The main phase of communication with residents doesn't actually start yet. We noticed we did publicise in the Autumn Citizen that the council has committed to food waste and glass collection, which is a good news story. We had a few people phone up saying, "Can I have my new recycling box?" Because they thought it was starting next week. People don't always read the fact that it's coming in 2021. So we won't start the big phase of communication yet, but that doesn't mean that we're not planning it and thinking about it. Those are the main sort of activities at the moment that are ongoing. We can provide a proper project plan should members want that. It's probably worth going over now to a discussion, and if you've got any further questions and anything I haven't covered, let me know. And as Dave indicated earlier, it would be quite useful to have an indication of how you as a committee would like updates, because the closer we get to the launch date, I think the more important it becomes that we give you a regular update, and there will be key decisions to make along the way. There are the main decision, we know the profile of the service, but there'll be decisions on detail to make as we go along. So yeah, the more scrutiny the better, really, from our point of view. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. That's very helpful. I find that helpful, and it is a very exciting rollout, and we'll look forward to it as it moves forward. So I'm very happy to open to questions from the floor, and perhaps particularly comments about the scrutiny process and how regular that might be.
Effectively, I see this as a 2-part operation. One is the actual collection, and the second is use of a recycling centre. But in fact, there's a relationship between the two. They are separate identities, and one can survive without the other. The other can't survive without the other. But in relation to the actual unit at Moss Barton, is there going to be a period of time where that is offline, or are you actually phasing in the new machinery so that that's in there well ahead of the actual new introduction of recycling?
There will need to be a period of downtime to install the new equipment, because the footprint of the MRF is quite limited. We'll keep that as short as possible, because of course, while we can't separate material, we have to send it somewhere else, and we have to pay a fee for that. So yeah, there will be that. There is an estimate in the costs, but it will depend on the amount of downtime, obviously how quickly the new installation can take place, and what element of sorting we can do in the meantime. But yes, there'll be an element of downtime.
The second point is on the other project. Is the intention to go across the city all at one go, a phased operation across the city, or or is it useful to consider having a small pilot ahead of the rollout so that so the public can actually be physically involved in the exercise, and you can then produce your promotional materials, videos, or whatever else you want to do from an actual operation in Exeter, rather than having to paraphrase what might be happening elsewhere?
Yeah, this big debate within the team. I mean, in some ways, a big bang rollout in one go, from a RAN planning point of view, is preferable. However, the sheer logistics of getting that many bins out suggests a phased rollout, and typically you might divide Exeter into 3 or 4 zones, and do one zone at a time, and possibly do the first zone a little way ahead, so you have a chance to learn some lessons. Yeah, that's quite valid. Again, at the East Devon, they piloted 2 areas. One was Exeter Town Centre, Colony, which is where the photo was taken, and the other was rural Pennington. So they tried 2 very different areas, but they deliberately chose the most difficult area first. And they thought, if we can make it work in the central Exmouth, really narrow, tight housing, it will work anywhere. And that, I think that's a sound approach.
Castle.
Yeah, presumably part of the accounting for this, making a case for it. These machines, do they sort this stuff presumably quicker than the hand sorting? So there will be consequences for the number of people doing the hand sorting. I just wonder what the employment status of those people is. I mean, I've been to the site in the centre. I've seen for myself. It's not the most ideal job, but it needs work. Thank you.
Because we're actually collecting more materials for recycling, the overall number of jobs in the waste service, there's a slight net increase in jobs. So the collection crews will increase in number. Reason being, curbside sort is a slower operation. One of the fears of our crew members was we'll never finish a round with a lorry like that. So I had to point out that they do half as many households in a day. So they work at half the speed because they're sorting as they go along. But that means the sorting doesn't have to happen on the MRF. So the way the materials are collected, the glass will go in one compartment of the lorry, so that's already separate. Same with the cardboard, same with the paper. It's the plastics, cans, and the Tetra Pak cartons that will be the mixed material. That's the main element of sorting at the MRF. And what you have is the machine does about 90% of the work, but it's not perfect. So what we have is what we call quality control, which is basically a person taking their turn on the belt after that process. So that the belt that you saw after that station would be 1 or 2 people checking what the machine might have missed. We think possibly 6 people still actually at the MRF, ensuring that what's going in is the right stuff, and polishing the quality at the end. And also, the material then has to go into a baler and be loaded onto an Arctic lorry to go off to processing. So those depot staff will still be needed. So the number of jobs is not under threat, because actually there's a net increase in employment. Some people's posts will change, so that's where we'll shortly be starting formal workforce consultation. We've had informal staff meetings, so they know what's coming, but the detail of exactly whose jobs are going to change is something we'll be working through. We also, I mentioned the sorting of cardboard and paper. That's particularly where the machine will do the sorting, but you really want somebody adding a bit of extra quality control. The cardboard mainly, because especially with commercial collections, most of what businesses produce is cardboard, loads of it, and with delivery companies and whatnot, there's just more and more cardboard out there. It's getting harder to ship because there's a glut of material. As I mentioned, some councils have to pay to get rid of it. So we want to continue selling it as a product. Quality has to be key, and what we'll do is we'll complement the machinery with people, because that's what works best. At the moment, I think we've got the balance wrong. We've got 18 people stood on sorting lines in the MRF and some machinery. So we want to really flip the balance so that there are fewer people stood on the sorting line, more people out there actually collecting the material.
Can I just follow up on that quickly? So is your anticipation that the existing staff members will be retrained and redeployed?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I just add to that? We will need more drivers as well, because obviously we need more vehicles because the production rates are lower. So what we're planning is to have almost like an apprenticeship scheme where we get young people in who will start off as loaders and then they will train to be professional drivers. So that's part of the proposal as well.
Councillor Foggin.
I mean, I welcome this scheme. I think it's a brilliant idea, but places like Watford Street and other places when you've got the lorries going down, and not necessarily our lorries, but when the brewery delivers, and we get a build-up of traffic behind, Exeter soon gets gridlocked. Are you actually working around that? Have you got a plan B if there's an issue and a problem there?
Yeah, we do plan our rounds as much as possible to avoid certain areas at certain times. So key through routes we try and avoid at rush hour anyway. That's going to become even more important with the vehicles. They will move slower in streets that are high density population. So rounds may have to be tweaked.
Yeah.
Once we introduce the service and as we learn which areas take longer, the rounds have to change as we go along. Interestingly, some of the other authorities that do curbside store actually start slightly later in the morning and work a bit longer in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But they all aim to be off the road before the evening rush hour.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Sparks.
I was just wondering, obviously our recycling rates are sort of mid-30s, so once this scheme's introduced, where will it take our rates?
Our consultant, that did the modelling for us, took a fairly conservative approach and said our recycling rate should reach 49 or 50%. The England average at the moment is 45%. I'm quite pleased in a way that the Eunomia were conservative because it means they haven't over-egged the recycling rate or the income that we expect. But in practice, councils that have comprehensive recycling collections, including all the main materials plus food, especially the ones that reduce the frequency of rubbish collection, tend to achieve recycling rates of 50-60% or more, somewhere in the 60s. However, some of those are rural authorities with a more stable population. In Exeter, we've got some areas where there's quite a high turnover of residents in rented accommodation. They tend to take a bit longer to grasp how to recycle. Sooner they got the hang of it, then they move on and a new cohort of people have moved in. So there are some demographic factors that suggest Exeter's recycling rate might be a few percentage points lower, but I would still expect to be recycling under 50% if our service is properly introduced. The other thing to add to that is it's not just about the highest recycling rate, it's reducing the amount of waste we produce in the first place. One of the things we are proud of in Exeter, our recycling rate is suffering now because our MRF is old and we're not doing food waste and so forth. But Exeter is one of the lowest waste producers in the country. So one of our performance indicators is the kilograms per head of total waste produced, whether it's recycled or refuse. And Exeter is in the lowest 10% of the country. And most of the lowest councils are actually in London. So outside London, we're one of the very lowest waste producers. And we want to maintain that because that's at the top of the waste hierarchy, maintain that low waste culture that we've got, but simply shift what we are producing away from rubbish and towards recycling. So what I'd like to do is still be in the bottom 10% of waste producers, but get the recycling rate up to at least 50%.
And that is, I think, one of the key aspects of scrutiny going forward, is because there's no point in this very expensive investment if we aren't having an impact on recycling rates and so forth. Councillor Mitchell was next, and Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I must say that I'm really in favour of this project, and it's something that we need to push forward. And certainly, as a scrutiny committee, we need to be looking at it in great detail regularly. So, to answer your question initially, Chair, I feel that this should really be a standing item on this scrutiny committee, so that when issues do arise, there is obviously an opportunity, and if there isn't major issues, then just a brief report could come forward at that time just to keep us updated. So I think that would be of vital importance that we have our role in shaping this and making sure it's as good as it hopefully will be. Picking up on a couple of things that you said just a minute ago, actually, because obviously we're a university city, and it wouldn't surprise you I could say this since I represent the university. Have we and will we be having regular meetings and involvement with the university? Because obviously they'll be key players in terms of communicating to the student population so that this scheme can be rolled out as effectively as possible. And secondly, have we looked at any other university cities who have similar schemes to see what lessons they have learnt from rolling out schemes like this, so that again we can make it as successful as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so with Exeter University, we do have as you know, the annual Students on the Move scheme. On top of that, a couple of other developments. First of all, we now have the contract to collect waste and recycling from the campus, and pleasingly, the university insisted on separate collection of materials. So rather than the commingled everything in one recycling bin, they insisted that cardboard is kept separate, plastic is separate, cans are separate. So they get the message about quality material. We've also been contacted by their sustainability team, I think community and sustainability team. They want to know what more the university can do to use its influence in the wider community. We've been scratching our heads thinking, well, what can the university do for us? They do Students on the Move, but I think there's an opportunity here. If the university wants to have a bigger profile I think they want to improve their image of having general benefit to the community. So one of the things we'll be wanting is, well, how can you help us get the message out to students on campus, but also living in the city, about the new service and how best to get the message across. We also applied to have to offer placements to postgraduate students to come do research studies for us. And I think one of the things they can help with is how to get the message across, particularly to the student population, because some of our methods of communication work better for students than others. I mean, and also, you've got to be a young person at university sometimes, I think, to understand how best to get the message across. So that's useful. Went to an interesting presentation from Oxford City Council about how to engage with students, and there's some useful lessons. The main one they said was, don't treat the students as a special breed. They use the same service, they speak the same language. You might tweak the communication media slightly, you might make more use of web-based communication, but the overall message isn't that different. They're not sort of a completely special case. So generally, you just have to make a bit more effort to reach them sometimes. But if the university is wanting to reach out and improve its reputation for working with partners, then we've got a great opportunity to get them to help. and maybe you can put a bit of resources into it, not just advise.
Thank you, and thank you for your suggestion, Councillor Mitchell, of this being a standing order. I'm very open to that. Happy to hear other thoughts on that. Councillor Shelton comes to you next.
Right, yeah. Thank you. I'll pick up on the last thing first, which is not what I planned to ask. I think it's important that we don't, you're quite right, not so kind of right, you don't talk about students. What we're talking about is the mobile population. People in my part of Coventry will tell me that there's lots of students. There are some, but what they aren't actually have, an awful lot of hospital staff in shared accommodation, because it's 5 minutes walk away. So, but it's a young person and they leave at all hours of the day and night, therefore they are a student. But the issue is exactly the same. They're only there for 6 months. And so they come in, you teach them out what the recycling system is. Then you change it after they've been there 3 months, which is what we're going to do to some of them. Then they go, then you've got to do it all again. So I think that's the key, one of the key things we've got to deal with, is the continuing education. Because it's great at the start, you can have all these extra resources, but long term you're not going to have them. How do you keep educating the turnover? Because people wildly underestimate the turnover in population. I think most people in this room would think Coventry is a pretty stable place. You don't, people come, people go. Over a 4-year cycle, 48% of the population changes in Coventry. I was shocked when I found that stat. It's made up of some paved streets no one moves for years, but other streets every 6 months. The population turns over. So you do have that. The other thing I wanted to raise, because I know I'm a maths and I can, there it is, was I'm saying the crew like a 37.5-hour week.
37.
37. Okay, really 37.5 hours for this bit of maths, okay, it's easier.
That's right.
Because with 600, he said 676 per day, so that's broadly 40 seconds per house, which doesn't sound a long time. I'm quite impressed that it can be done that quickly, because what I did for days I've been there, which is probably a day longer than most people want to do, I can assure you. I slept well. It takes a while, just my current system, you put the bin on the loader, it loads up, it loads down, you take it back. You're not doing it much less than 20 seconds. Now, I suppose you do, you're talking probably 15 seconds ahead. I'm impressed that it can be done that quickly. But people are going to have to accept the fact it's going to take that lorry twice as long to go down the road.
Thank goodness we've got you, Councillor Shelton, working these, working out the maths. Come back to any further comments on that. So.
Only to comment, that figure of 676 was based on comparison with other local authorities, whether they're urban or rural. Interestingly, quite a few councils claim to be well over 700. Newport in South Wales was one comparator, they're up to 750. And that's with only one loader on board. Now, they are notorious for working their crews hard. So, again, the consultants were quite conservative, which I'm relieved about because we obviously want productivity and good quality material, but not at the expense of people working 12-hour days or taking shortcuts on health and safety. And I suspect that some of the authorities, I won't mention them, they either use a very young, fit workforce, or they rely on just spending out on lots of overtime to get the job done. We would far rather plan the rounds properly and get the job done in the contracted hours. There will obviously be occasions when problems occur, but I've stuck with that conservative estimate of under 700 per day, because if you try and squeeze it more, then people are going to rush, you can have accidents or injuries or whatever. So it's fairly robust, and it's slightly on the low side, but our workforce is used to a particular working method. There's going to be a lot of adaptation, so we're not going to overrate it.
I'll just comment briefly on that, because I know Newport quite well. I lived there for the best part of 3 years when I was a student, and it's very easy to say it's an urban area, that's an urban area. It's a very different mix of properties. There are far more terrace streets in Newport than residential housing stock. In my previous life, working in the bank, it was quite amazing when you started looking at the distribution of housing types in different cities that were comparable, for want of a better term. And Newport, for example, which in many ways is comparable to Exeter, huge number of 202 down terraces above the mountain of Exeter, and even what they would be their nearest thing to Tottenham would be Gillian. It's still really cramped and compact, and with a huge housing estate on the edge. So I would be surprised if they don't deliver a higher level than us. So I think you probably have taken the right line in high 600s rather than the mid 700s.
That's a nice sure.
Thanks, so I support the other councillor on making this a standing item on the agenda, because we are going to scrutinise a major programme like this. It's got to be regularly done. On occasions there might not be much to discuss, others will, but I think it would be helpful for all of us if you could produce a timeline-based business plan for us all to have to hold in advance, because clearly there are going to be crucial times and crucial points along the agenda when we need to be checking things have happened or are going to happen, or we need to get involved in reviewing the decisions. And I think we need that in advance for the whole programme, because what I thought was interesting in the presentation, we need a separate programme for our customer involvement. So we're talking about our staff, we're talking about the units of 67, 80,000 customers out there. And I think you need a distinct business plan for them and their involvement in the process. And we need to consider all those timelines together, so that we actually know what is happening on time and at the right cost.
Okay, if the rest of the committee agrees, then yeah, we can do that. Produce that business and project plan for every committee. How would you advise us sort of deadlines and things? Would it be the standard template deadline?
Yes. The intention was an initial one for us all to have ready for the next meeting, and then update as we go through, so we can actually go a schematic view of the whole thing up to 2022.
Does that feel doable, realistic from your point of view? Absolutely. I can't imagine, maybe wrong to say if you feel differently, but that seems a sensible proposal. And we're happy with the standing orders, monthly, every we are 2-3 months with the meeting wise. Yeah, okay. Thanks. Then I'll come out to home.
We already have a project plan for the scheme, so we can let you have a look at that. The communications plan is underway at the moment, so we need to work out exactly when's the right time to start consulting with people. So bringing that here, giving you something to start off. It will change as the project goes along, but we can review that at the meeting today.
Thank you, Chair. As David Harris pointed out, we already have this project plan, and I have regular meetings with Simon on a monthly basis to check that we're up to date with this project plan. I was quite clear at the very outset that I wanted a plan with milestones and timelines in, so I wanted to be able to say, you haven't ordered the vehicles yet, why not? You haven't done this yet, why not? Or whatever. The two things I really wanted to say. First of all, many of you will know this is National Apprenticeships Week, and we've had several events for which David's team have been involved. One in the Guildhall today, for which we were presented with an award, and one yesterday at Sandy Park. And it gives me great pleasure to see that our solution for a labour shortage is to home grow our own talent. And that gives me great pleasure indeed that we are giving opportunities for Exonians and powerful training opportunities. Clearly, I'll be sad if we train people up, they get HGV licenses and off they disappear to work for somebody else at twice the rates or whatever. Clearly, that will be a problem for us. But to give that opportunity to young Exonians through our own projects, I think is a mark of what this authority is really about. And being involved in the national apprenticeship stuff on one side and seeing the sort of the nice things that happen, seeing the gritty bits, and we're actually doing something about it, really pleases me. And that moves me on to really the second part of it. It's not often noticed, but Simon and his team are doing this at the moment without any extra help. Yeah. So recently we've tendered for and won the university waste collection contract from the campus. Simon's team put together that tender, as well as collecting however many bins it is a day and returning them, and making sure that the lorry is maintained and the staff will look after and so on and so forth. So we've asked them to do that commercialisation work, and they've done it very successfully. we're also asking Simon and his team to develop this process, which is again over and above. It's on top of their normal daily work. They do what they do on a daily basis, and this as well. Now, Simon has identified that we may well be needing extra people to do communications when we get closer to that period of time. But I think as councillors, you need to remember what your staff are doing for you. Yeah, we can go out and proclaim that we're doing this service on the streets and whatever else. Simon and his team are making it happen within their daily working lives, as well as collecting all the bins and doing whatever else needs doing. And I think that really needs to be recorded in the minutes. And I'm certainly extremely appreciative of what the staff are doing here. Yeah, and I keep an eye on it on a fairly regular basis, as I've said. David keeps an eye on it. Yeah, and we all pull together. And that's what's happening here. Is that I was out there a month or so ago talking about something else. And I don't know, many of you know Oakwood House? Yeah, the bottom floor is where the guys have their breaks and stuff or whatever. And you just walk in there, and I usually tend to walk in there, I go in there, and I go to the toilet. And they talk to me and they say they're really excited about this. You know? And I would expect to hear, you know, guys who are out of the grumble, you're changing my life, this, that, and the other, I don't like this, whatever. You know, I'm a bit of a bonus and all this sort of stuff. You know, I'm really excited. Yeah? This is being done. And it's being done properly, and we're taking our time, and we're making sure we do the right thing. There will be hiccups along the way, there will be bumps on the road, but I think due to the excellent professionalism of our staff, it's going to be minimised, and it's going to be great when we manage to get it rolled out. Thank you.
I think that's a point extremely well made, and I agree. We should certainly minute our huge thanks for all the work that's going on, continue to do the enormous undertaking, and not only that in addition to the daily work, but then being dragged into the scrutiny committee in the evening as well to be asked questions about it. That's levels of more exciting. If there are more, any more questions or comments, particularly on the scrutiny process, so we've identified a couple of things, I think, but anything further in terms of the particular aspects we want to scrutinise on, I think it's been mentioned, but the recycling rates and the impact on that, I think, is something that, again, should be regularly updated. Happy to take any more points or questions if there are any. If not, we will thank you both very much. All three of you, thanks very much indeed for your time this evening. We'll see you next time. So just to outline the proposals then that I think we have made. One is that the curbside waste collection rollouts will be a standing item on our agenda. And secondly, that the timeline / business plan / common strategy should be distributed to members of this committee in advance of the next meeting. I think those are the kind of proposals we made. There's probably more as we can move ahead, but thank you again, much appreciated, very helpful. Yeah. And that moving on to make that noise at the agenda items. Items of consideration for future meetings is our final item, which is number 11. And just to let members know that one of the items we had discussed previously was the community safety partnership. We've met, Mike and I met with Simon Lane in the end, it was going to be Joe Young, but we met with Simon, and that would be a similar kind of plan, I think, for that we've agreed, rather than anything more specific at this stage, but we can have a look at whether there's a spotlight review or something similar coming out of that. But what will happen in the next meeting, which is the 2nd of April, if members are happy with this, is that we'll have Simon Lane, we'll have Simon Ellis from the police team, certainly at least one other person who will come and present, and we'll discuss the community safety partnership as it stands, what the thoughts of the future, the challenges. We'll have another discussion. That may lead to other work, a subcommittee of some kind, which you may decide. That'll be up to you. So, I think what we've asked, because it's such a big area, that is that they focus on what seems to be the main issues as councillors, local councillors, we were dealing with, which is antisocial behaviour, drugs issues, how we're tackling that, particularly in the public spaces, so in parks, in churchyards, driving, alleyways, and that sort of area. So I think that will be the focus. But hopefully that feels like a good discussion topic the next time. But we have this as a standing item on the agenda, so if you do have other items you think of since the last meeting would like to raise them now, please do. If not, it will remain a standing item on the agenda, I believe, so we can come back and revisit this later. But that will go, any of these ideas will then go to the Scrutiny Programme Board, which is politically balanced, and for discussion about how best we will take that forward. I hope this is beginning to move forward effectively, but this has been, I think, quite a useful example of how a sort of general discussion is quite helpful as a starting point. I hope you agree. If there are no other comments on that item, we draw to a close. The next meeting is Thursday, the 2nd of April. Seeing you then. Thank you all. Thank you.